Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're trying to get a real handle on things nearly a month after that ceasefire started, back on October 10th, 2025.
Hmm.
It's, it's a fragile reality. When you hear truce, you'd think quiet, maybe some stillness. But what we're seeing in the information coming out is defined by some really stark contradictions.
That's right. The first one is that the relative quiet in Gaza, it hasn't stopped the counting. In fact, it seems to have sped up the grim task of tallying the dead.
Yeah, like a relentless drumbeat almost.
Exactly. And the second thing is,
Geographical. The pause in Gaza hasn't translated to the West Bank, not at all. We're seeing staggering death tolls emerge from Gaza, while flashpoints are, frankly, exploding in the West Bank.
So a pause defined by numbers and simultaneously by new violence.
Precisely. We need to look at both those arenas today to really understand what's happening.
Okay, let's start with Gaza then, because the figures are they're overwhelming. This past Saturday, November 8th, we hit a terrible milestone.
The official count of Palestinians killed since the war began in October 2023 climbed to 69,169. We have to remember, these aren't just numbers, they're lives.
Absolutely, and it's natural to ask, why is that number still going up so much during a ceasefire? Is it just delayed reporting of fighting?
Right, you'd think the rate would slow dramatically.
Well, it's actually more about the process after the intense fighting stopped. It's about recovery and identification. That's what's driving this surge now.
So the ceasefire basically allowed people to finally start digging through the rubble.
In essence, yes. Teams have been able to access areas, pull more bodies from collapsed buildings since October 10th. It's painstaking work.
And dangerous too, I imagine.
No doubt. And then comes the identification. Just between October 31st and November 7th, for instance, they logged 284 new identifications. It's the accounting catching up.
But it wasn't complete silence either, was it? There was still some violence.
That's the other hard truth here. Even with the truce, 241 people were killed in Gaza since October 10th. Israel mentioned specific strikes targeting remaining militants or infrastructure.
So it's a combination. Recovery efforts, finally identifying remains, and some continued lower-level conflict.
Correct. All feeding into that figure climbing past 69,000.
And we know the health ministry's data, which international groups generally trust, also warns thousands more still missing under all that debris.
Yeah, that 69,000, as horrific as it is, might just be the confirmed cases. The true number could be much, much higher. The ledger is still open.
Okay, let's shift slightly. Part of the ceasefire involved this, Criff. This incredibly somber ritual. The exchange of the fallen.
A difficult thing to discuss, but central to the agreement. It's this trade, if you can call it that, which really underscores the shared human cost.
Is there a specific instance that helps illustrate this?
Yes, on Friday, November 7th, news broke that Hamas had returned the remains of Lior Rudef,
Oh, I remember reading about him.
an Israeli citizen. He died defending his kibbutz near Yitzhak during the initial attack back in 2023. Argentine-born, and he'd spent his life as a volunteer ambulance driver there.
Someone dedicated to saving lives, lost in that violence. It really brings it home.
It does, puts a face to the loss.
So what were the overall numbers for this exchange by Saturday, November 8th?
Okay, so on the Israeli side, 23 sets of hostage remains had been returned since October 10th, reportedly leaving just 5 still in Gaza.
And going the other way?
On Saturday, Israel transferred 15 Palestinian bodies to Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. That brought the total transferred into Gaza since the truce started to 300.
300 bodies returned.
Yes. But here's where another layer of tragedy emerges. Of those 300, only 89 had been identified by that point.
Why so few? What's holding up the identification for those families?
It's fundamentally a resource issue. They're facing a severe lack of DNA identification kits.
Just the basic tools needed.
Right. The scale of death has completely overwhelmed the capacity to identify everyone quickly. So you have hundreds of families just waiting in agony.
It shows, doesn't it, that this kind of exchange, while maybe necessary for some closure, doesn't mean victory for anyone, just voids.
Only voids. That feels like the right description. There are no victors here.
Okay, so while Gaza is grappling with this immense grief and the slow process of accounting, the story in the occupied West Bank is starkly different. The pause hasn't brought quiet there.
Not at all. It seems like the opposite, in fact.
And the timing is just tragically ironic. We're in the middle of the olive harvest.
Yeah, a time that should be about tradition, about sustenance. These ancient groves, they're supposed to be symbols of life.
Instead, they've become battlegrounds.
That's exactly what we saw on Saturday, November 8th. Take the village of Beita. Reports came out describing Israeli settlers launching a really vicious attack.
Who are they targeting?
Palestinian farmers, obviously, but also paramedics who came to help, journalists covering it, and even international activists who were present as observers.
Just indiscriminately attacking everyone there.
It sounds like it. 11 people were hospitalized. Injuries from rocks, from clubs. It was brutal.
Do we have any first-hand accounts?
We do. There's testimony from a well-known activist, Jonathan Pollack. He was there. He described seeing dozens of settlers charging down these steep, rocky hillsides, actually swinging weapons.
That sounds terrifying.
He specifically mentioned watching 5 attackers surround a journalist and her guard and just pummeling them. He said they hit her helmet so hard it cracked like an eggshell.
My goodness.
Pollack himself got hit by a rock while trying to film what was happening. Just chaos.
And you said this wasn't the only incident that day?
No, nearby in Burin, Palestinian medics reported another settler raid. 4 foreign activists and a local man, 57 years old, were wounded there.
And the Israeli military's response?
At the time these reports came out, the military hadn't commented on either clash.
Okay, so these are specific incidents, but do they fit into a larger pattern?
Oh, absolutely. And the pattern is deeply worrying. The UN's humanitarian agency, OCHA, they track this stuff. In October alone, they recorded over 260 settler attacks against Palestinians or their property.
Over 260 in 1 month.
Yeah. That averages out to about 8 attacks per day.
Wow.
And OCHA says that's the highest monthly figure since they started systematically tracking this back in 2006.
The highest in nearly 2 decades.
Yes.
That tells you something significant is happening right now.
It really does. The volatility is undeniable.
With that level of violence, what about accountability? Are people being arrested for these attacks?
Well, that seems to be a major issue. Human rights groups consistently point to a lack of enforcement. Scarce arrests, few prosecutions.
Is there data on that?
There are Israeli media reports citing police data from previous years. They suggested that something like only 3.8% of reported cases of settler violence actually resulted in charges being filed.
Less than 4%. That's incredibly low.
It suggests a climate of, well, perceived impunity. And you mentioned those international activists.
Right. They were present at both Beita and Burin.
Their presence is meant to deter violence, to be a kind of protective shield for the farmers during the harvest. But the irony now is that their presence seems to be making them targets as well.
So trying to help actually puts them in the line of fire.
It seems that way.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's try to pull these threads together. We've looked at Gaza, the grim counting, the return of remains, that agonizing wait for identification.
Yeah, the sheer weight of the loss there, even under ceasefire.
And then we shifted to the West Bank, seeing how this traditional harvest season has become a focal point for, well, record levels of reported violence.
Olive groves turned into focal points. It
Yeah.
really drives home the point that a ceasefire in one area doesn't automatically mean peace. These pauses, they aren't endings, not by a long shot.
The bodies are returned, yes, but the underlying tensions are just simmering, sometimes boiling over elsewhere. For us, for anyone watching, the challenge is to see beyond the huge abstract numbers.
To connect them to the individual stories, the testimonies.
Exactly, because maybe that's the only way to prevent this cycle from just continuing.
Which brings us to a really troubling question, doesn't it? I mean, if the olive harvest, this fundamental season of life and sustenance, is now attracting the highest level of violence recorded in nearly 20 years.
Yeah, what does that tell us?
What does that signal about any long-term hope for turning this pause, this fragile truce, into something lasting? What kind of actions, truly meaningful actions beyond just stopping the bombs for a bit, are actually needed to guarantee something as basic as the right for a farmer to just pick an olive without fearing for their life?
That's the question we have to leave you with today. A difficult one with no easy answers in sight.